this afternoon. Just kind of give you a quick review. We'll be looking at the ambulance service fund transfer, but after that, we'll be doing some general fund budget transfers, and Lisa will be covering those. And to save us some time, this is money that has already been designated. We're just moving it around. So I'm going to ask that we do a voice vote instead of a roll call on those together, and we'll have Lisa do that. But if you would, Miss Lisa, I'll let you start off if you're ready.
Okay. The ambulance department is requesting transfer of funds from account 312, 322, and 335 into the 399 account. And that's the account that's used to pay the billing for the state EMS fees. The new billing company is collecting more funds, and the state EMS fees have also increased. So the request to transfer funds from 307 and 453 and 425 is for gasoline items, and y'all know about the fuel. Okay, I'm going to go back to the first one. I went too fast. 20,000 from contracts with private agencies, 4,000 from evaluation and testing, and 10,000 from maintenance and repair of buildings going to the other contracted services. That was the one that was talking about their billing company. Then the next one is to decrease communications and vehicle parts to put money in gasoline. And then the last is a $600 donation that would go to their EMS week.
Okay, on this one, I will need a motion, and we will do a roll call. Not the transfers I was talking about.
Well, it's still with, this is transfers too. It's all.
Is it? So we can do voice vote?
There's the last one will be an amendment. That $600 will be an amendment, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to see if I may have already done that one too. Okay, if we could do them all except that $600 one, because I've got that on my big one.
Got it in your revenue adjustments? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you've heard the request. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the amendment as presented, less the $600, which will be accounted for in a
Revenue estimates.
revenue estimate.
Do I hear a second? And then
Second.
Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Chairman, our rules say that anything involving dollars has to have a recorded vote. So I don't think we should do a voice vote.
Well, I think we can change our rules if we see fit, but I want to leave that up to the committee, and I'm looking for ups or downs. Committee, what do you think on this? He's right about our rules. Say your roll call. Okay. So we have a motion, a second. Are there any questions? And we are doing a roll call.
And with that being said, can we just, now that we're going to do a roll call vote, can we put the $600 in with it too?
I don't want to do the 600 because I've got it at another place. We'll eventually do the 600, just not in this one.
Okay, so the motion is to approve these items listed other than the 600, which is the last line there. And the second was okay with that. Any other questions? Please call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, so the next one is what you're saying, that I'm just going to go down every one of them until y'all tell me stop. First one, emergency management, that is moving $6,610 from from other supplies and materials going to repair of maintenance for vehicles. Correctional Work Center, this is a request to move $15,000 from other contracted services to maintenance and repair of buildings. $15,000. County clerk needs to change this based on, okay. Taking it, we may have to change this one, but it's 20,000, I'm going to do it this way. Still the 20,000 to postal charges and a reduction of employee-dependent insurance. Okay, building maintenance. There's two of them. One is to reduce their operating lease payments by $1,100 to increase travel to be able to pay their part of a training that two of their people are going to. The other one is to decrease other supplies and increase gasoline. Human Resources is requesting $500 from other charges to office supplies to pay for toner, paper, badge holders, and batteries. Sheriff Office request is to move $40,000 from dispatch radio operators into their overtime. Building Codes is requesting $33,500 from the employee independent insurance into maintenance agreements. That's all.
Okay, you have heard the request. Are there any questions for Lisa on any of these transfers? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to cover, and this will be for all these mentioned.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? And second. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Lisa.
Next one is the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority. Recommendations, I think you've got that document in front of you.
Lisa, there's a couple of pages there that we don't normally get that the airport authority prepared. It just gives you a little synopsis of kind of what's going on at the airport and kind of where they got their budget figures. That might be interesting to read, to see, kind of to know what's going on, since we're involved with them as a joint venture, and we're loaning them money on some of these projects they're discussing there. So the third page is just a synopsis of the debt that they are paying to Rutherford County and to Town of Smyrna. And then the fourth page is their budget, showing a net profit budgeted of $635,195. Those particular increases there that you can see noted.
Give you a few minutes to peruse that. This is something they're required to provide for us. But if no one has any questions, or got a moment to look at it, Commissioner Stevens.
I'll make a motion that we approve the budget as presented.
I have a motion to approve the budget as presented. And a second. Any questions? Mark, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Just a quick question, that 600, we took care of that in the other motion?
It will be in
Fixing to pick it up in the revenues, okay. Please continue then.
okay, so now we're ready to do revenue adjustment. After we closed, go through all of them if there's any particular.
Lisa, do you have your mic on?
I do. Let me just move over here. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start with the general fund. We're recommending increases in total county property tax of $3,159,782. That's my largest one, followed by the local option sales tax and hotel motel, which we've talked about this all through the year. So, we were expecting these. I'm not going to read every one of them so that you can peruse it. But the bottom line for the general fund, after we take out reserves and there are expenses that relate to some of the revenues, also increase the county's portion of workers, the OJI contribution and judgments. After that, let me tell you this, I've got total increases of $10,119,000 and decreases of $2,604,000. That's net $7,514,984. But after all the increases to reserves and expenses of $1,909,000, the estimated increase to fund balance based on these revenue adjustments is $5,805,229. I'm going to keep going unless y'all have specific questions. Or
You said 5,000,008. I'm seeing 5,000,006.
read my glasses. I have little print. Let me do it over here.
That's correct, 5,000,006.
5,605,000. It really looks different here. 5,605,229. Thank you. I'm going to read from here, Rhonda. Tell me if I get it wrong. Okay, in Fund 116, this fund does not get property tax. The total increase in revenue is estimated at $2,114,425 after the Trustees Commission estimating an increase to fund balance of $2,089,425. Okay, on this one, on Fund 118, I have total increases of $1,058,735 and a decrease of $108,633 with an increase of Trustees Commission. I have $940,102. I've got to make one correction. If you see, this is the 600. I had it listed here, but I need to put the offset expenditure also, 600 there. And so the increase is going to be less $600. So just know I'll fix that as we move forward. And the drug control fund, adjust our estimates to $218,176, increasing the Trustees Commission of $2,000 to have a net increase to the restricted for public safety of $216,176. In Fund 131, which is our highway fund, increases of $1,525,669, decrease of $10,000, the increase in the Trustees Commission of $35,000. The estimate for increase of these revenue adjustments is $1,480,669. The estimate for debt service increases of $2,621,156, a decrease of $519,427, increase of trustees' commission to have a net increase to fund balance of $2,076,729. Now, I did not do the schools. Typically, they roll theirs in a little later. I request for adjustments.
Lisa, do you need any motions from us on presenting the revenue? So we will need to approve it.
We need to have your approval so that we can post these revenue adjustments to the budget for the current year.
Lisa, I had included Fund 121, the special purpose fund.
Oh, 121.
And that's,
121.
that amount is so low that we would just
Yeah.
leave it as it is. It's no reason
Right.
to adjust it since it's
I
only
look at it.
investment income.
I look at that one, but it's so little, it just, I don't typically adjust that one.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So this year was the year that the Nissan payment in lieu of taxes was coming off. Has that been appealed?
Here.
But do you
It's
know-
not this year.
But
It came off February 15, 2022. So it's the 22 taxes that's next fiscal year.
have you heard yet, is that going to be appealed?
Yes.
Has it been appealed?
I think it's,
We don't know.
I think it is, but nobody has said they are, but I feel like they will, based on what one people say numbers are and what's the other. Yeah. Now, with that Nissan appeal, if you want to talk about, I mean, that's really for next year. I mean, because this year, we're okay. It's the next year impact, because it impacts two different things. We come back to it? Okay. After this.
Okay, so you've heard the adjustments to revenue. Do I hear a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions for Lisa?
Or who was the second?
Johnson?
Johnson, okay.
Hearing no further discussion.
I've got- I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Commissioner Johnston. So I was kind of deep in thought. The motion is to approve what?
The revenue adjustments.
The revenue,
Okay.
yeah. Any further questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd? Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay.
Okay. On reviewing budgets as necessary, this is where I wanted to kind of come to. I've given all of you documents at your desk. And the first one is the May 18, 2022 estimate, unofficial, all wrapped around it until we get the certified rate from the state. But this is a working number for us. It's the one, it's, you had two things stapled. It's, the heading is 5/18/2022 estimate unofficial. Talking about the current tax rate. Do you have that, Commissioner? I have another one. Okay, so this goes back to your question, Commissioner Allen, on the Nissan coming on in 2022 for February 15 forward on the real property. There is a wide difference that materially to me affects these numbers. So when I'm budgeting, we're budgeting the estimated net collection of all taxes by June 30th. If this is appealed, we probably will not see that at June 30th. That's why I'm saying it typically goes into another year. So I just kind of let y'all know how the numbers are placed is I've reduced the assessments by an estimated disputed amount. Okay? So wherever it lands, whenever it lands, at least I felt like if we could budget based on what may not be disputed. Okay? Typically, we have all those kind of things all through the year, but this is so large, I was afraid it would, I just didn't want to. As far as assessed value, it's
Is there any, how much revenue could it bring in? And that may not be an unfair question, but
I'll come back to you on that.
you presented, quote unquote, a worst case or least revenue in the budget.
Right.
That may be good enough for now. I don't
Right.
know if we need.
Because I feel like
Let's let that rest of that. Let's let that evolve.
I didn't think, from my understanding on how these appeals last, you're not going to have it next fiscal year, that incremental bit.
Yeah, I ask that
Okay.
I need no more information. I'm good
Okay.
how you've budgeted it.
Okay. So that's kind of what, I just wanted you to know that is how I developed these numbers. So I'd shared this with Doug Beaudry, and this is what he's used for the schools when he was presenting the revenue for the schools. So you see how we go from $2.2194, and the rate that we're working with is $1.6158. So I want you to take the paper and flip it over, just so you see how I allocated it. So to start with, it is based on the ratio of the same ratio. That's how I got the pennies where they are. The pennies ultimately will move where you are, but I had to have a starting point. So that is how it was allocated to funds, based on the same ratio as they have it now. So in the numbers as we come up, I've already, because the schools had already done it and had already presented in their numbers, is that shift of 7 cents from education to education capital projects. So, but I wanted to start with, this is where we were, this is how we got, and now that's, so that ratio now at the end is different, but I just wanted to walk you through where we were. Okay, so if, I want to get y'all to the revenue. The ending sheet, the big long sheet, is, we may not be ready for this particular discussion yet, but this is kind of where we are. Fourth column over is our budgeted fund balance as of May 31st. As I told y'all, we just did the revenue estimates. That's in that column, 21-22 revenue estimates. And I told you that when we got to this point, we would adjust. So all funds excluding schools, we're recognizing an estimate of another $12.4 million in the current year budget to get to our estimated unassigned assigned fund balances. As we go through, you will see when we get to the individual sheets, I've already adjusted the additional revenue coming in for the revenue coming off the new assessments, the additional growth that we had. That's what you did not see before, is the growth that, using the numbers that the assessor has for growth. So, come back to that later. That catches you up on revenue, and we'll kind of look at this as we go through each one. But the first one, I think we're ready to discuss. If there is not any other discussion to revenue or where we are to this point, I'm going to jump right in and tell you what I've done to this point.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Dodd, you're okay with us moving on, or?
Okay, so I put this in the budget recommendation just because this is the column that we're working on. So revenue at $111,664,581. Now, we started with the mayor's recommendation at the beginning of May at $138,522,350. What you have done to date is we removed the payroll accountant. We fixed the DA because of we hired somebody with higher experience, more experience. The health department, deep cleaning, and Smyrna senior citizens. Now I've put in here, even though you haven't seen it, not really voted on it, because this is where we are now to really kind of solidify our budget for publication, is the recovery court, and the mayor, I know can touch on all of these. $138,739. I gave you all those worksheets night before, so you'd have them for recovery court, and I'm sure you can go in and explain what's happening there. And then maintenance, I gave that to you too, 512. That is additional full-time custodians and part-time. And then, because I just wanted to know for myself and be able to talk to you, is what does it look like? How much does it cost if we take, I don't want to say public safety, because I'm going to tell you which ones I did. And instead of applying a percentage for them, I did it separate. So that you understand where my thoughts are. When we presented to the mayor the 15%, because that's what he wanted, and the discussion, and that's what he wanted, even if it meant keeping everybody in the same step, just keep everybody in the same step, and just do 15%. But that kind of wreaks havoc with the processing of moving people up the ladder into steps. So we were able to accomplish the same goal that he wanted by lifting the table 13% and then the step. As you look at individual salary, it's as close to 15% that we could get accomplishing that goal. So, oh, and I added another step. I added another step because his goal was everybody to get 15%. So to be able to accomplish that, we added another step to make, because you've got a lot of people who have topped out. And so that's what we did.
22 steps?
22. So just telling you that's how I did to accomplish that. So, and it's doing that when you look at their annual salary, not the budgeted salary, but the annual salary from where they are on June 30th to where they are July 1. It's as close to 15, and sometimes it's 15.02, and sometimes it's 14.98, but it's right in there. Now, that's the lift of 13. What that does too, it's like if you were just hired, you get 13. Your step will come. So some might just see 13 because they were just hired. So that's the other part. But they'll get their step. So to get the vast majority of people, the 15, that's what we did. All right, now, with that same process, thought process, that's how I did the sheriff. It's a table lift of 18, and then still that same step. And so sometimes it's 20.02. I don't think I got anything below 20. I think everybody, at least with their step, they get 20. So, know that. So I say I because it's what we did at 10:30 last night, to have something for you. It was Sheriff's Department and jail and workhouse and juvenile detention. It was not positions that are in other jobs. Meaning, if it was an accounts payable person at the Sheriff's Department, matches accounts payable to mine, payroll, computer guy to computer guy, maintenance to maintenance. Those I did not, I kept on the 15%, so on the 15 table, not the 20 table. So the 20 table is all your, if I say boots on the ground, that means something to me. It's that officer, whether it's a detention officer or a deputy officer. That's who I applied it to. And all up the rank.
When you say deputy, you
All
mean
up the rank.
patrol?
Patrol, yes. Patrol, detention, and up the ranks. So all that to say, that's what I did to come up, and with that adds $1,629,000 to the general fund. I had to give you something, and I just need something back on what you want to do.
Well, we're gonna have to post a budget for public comment and review. And to tell you the truth, we haven't given her good direction. I want to say thank you for what you have come up with. That doesn't mean that this could not change, especially after we have public comment, after we've had review. I want to make that plain to everybody. This is a proposal. This is not our final.
Right.
But this is for part of what we'll be publishing to the public.
And Sonia has given you different scenarios of things that it could be, but it takes a lot of time to evaluate the position. It's not, your work history is going to be different from your work history. That's going to be different from your work history. This might be a shooting star and he went right up the rank very fast. Like maybe me, I would be not moving up very fast. It's just everybody's work life, especially in a department that has so many movement up. A lot of our departments, there's not a progression. It's a job, that's it. It just gives challenges. I guess what I'm trying to say with all that, it is difficult and it is time consuming that when you decide which way you want to do it, Sonia will do the deep dive to tell my office they belong on this pay grade and step. I'm using pay grade and step that I already have, that she's already given me for positions without change. A different methodology, but you had to have some numbers.
Again, I want to say thank you for your explanation as far as how we arrived to a 15% increase and a 20% increase. That is including the steps at both of those, and they average out right at 15 and 20. So I've heard people say, well, y'all are not being truthful. You're not really giving us 20 or you're not really giving us 15. We are, and we're trying very hard to explain how we got there.
Which we could have accomplished the same goal by saying nobody moves steps and everybody gets 15. But it was so hard to come up with a pay plan that includes a movement of steps, to just throw that out. Because this is the problem. He's been working here, and he is in the first year. And I'm telling him, no, okay, you've been here 5 years, and he's there. But now I'm not going to give him that next step because we said no steps, we just get your raise. Here comes Lisa knowing I've got 5 years, and we'll come and say, well, here you are, but we can't say no. We'd say, oh no, we got to keep you. It's not fair to put me coming in with 5 years outside experience to put me ahead of him who has worked here for for that 5 years. But we held him. That's why it's those kind of situations that get us later. And that's why it was, I guess I pleaded and begged to please, let's keep this
I've seen
step.
this in the past. Trey, I know you have, I know Paul has, where we didn't do the steps, and it absolutely messed our pay system up. We were years trying to straighten it out. And what she's talking about is not trivial. But
Get people mad another way.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. So if we could figure out the 13 and the step, why didn't we just do the 15 and the step?
But for whom?
No, because the pay study said that the table as it existed was 15% off. So why didn't we do the 15 and keep the step?
It was globally. And so you could say overall, the blended off is 15%. He also gave his recommendation was to move the median down and raise and change. You can do that, but it did not accomplish what the mayor wanted to accomplish. You had if you could just visualize. When you take the median that was at 11, this was the theory, at 11, and move it to 7, raise it 15%, go 2% this way. That could happen, but what happened is over on this side of the fence, where you started higher than the end table, we're getting way more raises, percentage-wise, because you were going, where we were going salary times 1.75, 0.175. Now you're at, starting here higher, 2. So at the end, your end of the higher scale table was paid, which I don't think was what you intended. I'm saying, so it could be a whole nother theory of how to apply a new table, a new way to do payroll.
So help me understand what you did with the 13 and keeping the steps, how that's different than doing 15 and keeping the steps. I'm still not following that piece
Okay.
of what you did differently with your 13 than what he recommended with the 15.
His 15 was to not move steps. Like, if you're due for your next step, I would say, no, Ms. Rhonda, you got to stay where you are, but you're going to get 15%.
I didn't hear that piece. I just heard the 15. I didn't hear the 15 don't move steps. I didn't hear that piece.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Any other questions about any of these points right now, or to where we're at? Commissioner Gooch.
On this page right here,
Yes. 101.
yes, on the 140,749,458, 458, does that include and I'm thinking I'm reading it correctly, but I'm reading this as that it includes the 15% and then also the 20% for public safety.
Yes.
Wait, just a minute. I want to interject something. When you say public safety, we have not defined that. But what she's saying that 20% for is for the sheriff's patrol, the jail, the correctional work center, and the juvenile detention.
And then that is the 1.6 million.
That is the incremental cost. That's the incremental cost of going from 15 to, again, no, when I say
5 extra
15, it's the
percent.
13 and
Yeah,
blah. and-
5 extra
Yeah,
percent.
all that.
Okay, so the total expenditure then for county general, my understanding is a $140,749,458
Right.
with all the raises
That's all the
that we've
raises,
talked about.
all the positions that the mayor's recommended. I mean,
In
it's-
addition to the sheriff's 20%, the extra 5% for
Right,
these
right.
items that we listed,
So-
the chairman listed earlier.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
But it also includes the 5 extra percent for what the positions that the chairman,
The jail, correctional work
Jail,
center, juvenile detention,
Yeah, that's it.
patrol.
okay, that's,
That's it.
You said 5%, that's 5% over the 15 that everybody's getting. but
Just
the
know that that's a
20% 's
blend.
Right, it's the
This makes it
20%.
clear and make sure people understand. So, with all that wrapped up and the preliminary, our revenues are below our expenses, with all of that in there at $29 million. Our fund balance is below our policy. Our current policy is at 15%. Now, so these numbers now have that, you know what I told you, when we changed our estimate of the current year revenue, that changed our beginning fund balance for next year. We're at 9.41, and I've presented this to you 2 different ways. One, the 15, to remain that we need another $7,872 or 5.5 cents. I don't want you to forget about comptrollers telling us in the class that they want us to go move up to 2 months, rounding it to 17. You can see that what that difference is, that you would need almost 2 more cents to be able to budget a fund balance for that. But again, we can wait until we close out the year and the auditors can tell us, you have to do it, or do it now. That's where we stand with all these things.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner,
if I may.
please.
Okay, so we have, our policy is 15% in the general fund. Are there any other funds concerning a policy?
Schools,
And that is
3.
anything else?
Yeah, I think schools are going to be fine.
No, I'm talking about any other funds other than school and general fund.
That's the only 2 funds that, okay, one is an internal policy. The schools is a state policy. And then federal policy on the cafeteria that it cannot be more than.
Okay.
So those are our limits.
Well, I'm going to make a suggestion. And I appreciate everything that everyone's done. And please check my math. But if we go with the general debt to 75%, that would add an extra $7,897,148 that we could add to the $13,239,496 general fund, which would give us ending fund balance there of $21,136,644, which puts us over our 15%.
Okay, you reminded me debt service has a policy as well.
I'm sorry?
Debt service has a minimum too. I mean, it's a layered approach. We try not to get below 65%.
But this would be 75%.
So that would be great if
75%
that's even better.
would free up $7,879,148. And if we add that to the ending fund balance in general fund of the $13,239,496, that will get us to an ending fund balance of $21,136,644, which is over the 15%.
How many cents? I'm going to back. Give me a minute, because I want to. Your paper. Can I see your paper? I cheat. Let's do it this way. I'm gonna.
You can do it the way you need. I don't know how many cents I need.
Okay, that's, all right, so. All right, so our 56, 186, 956, I'm gonna tell you that before we get all this, is how much are you gonna borrow next year on these schools? Because that's not in these numbers. You've got a lot of money. Okay, I just wanna make sure that. Okay, using the numbers we have and assume we're not going to do any building. 56, 186, 956, 75. So our fund balance needs to be 42,140,000, and we've got 500,3961. 7.8. If we were to use every little penny, let me get my pennies. $5.5. Good. So what we calculated is if we're trying to achieve a 75% fund balance, how much does that release in the debt service fund? And that's just taking 75% of what our debt service is for the year. That's $42,140,000. Our estimated ending fund balance is $50,039,039, and the difference of that is $7,899,000. I just divided that by the penny. That's 5.5.
So what did you say the estimated unassigned fund balance would be then after that, if we took that?
$42,140,000. Which just happens to be what you'd need.
Mr. Chairman, that would, just for clarification, that's not putting any money as a placeholder for any borrowing for any school additions at all.
Correct.
And right now, we've bid out 3, and we've got commissioners and school board members who are adamant that we need 3, and that leaves no money for that. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How does that leave no money for that?
Because there's no debt service calculated in there for additional borrowings.
Well, what does the appropriation, the $56,180,000?
That's our current debt. That's our current debt service on all the money that we owe.
Well, I don't know if it's fair or accurate to say that that doesn't leave anything for the schools that we've already talked about. we're taking, almost $8 million out of ending fund balance. It still leaves a healthy ending fund balance,
75%.
75%.
75 million of the current.
75%.
75% of the current
75%.
debt, correct? If we add more debt, we would need more. The 75 would be
Well,
more
it could-
than 42 million.
Well, it could vary, the ending fund balance could go down, obviously, but if the standard policy is 65%, that still leaves 10%, and I
Policy 65, and we bumped it to, we're using 75?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
and let me say this, the reason I'm really trying hard not to have a tax increase other than the certified rate, which some people will see a tax increase. We know that we're experiencing hyperinflation. And we know, we hear the economists say that we will be in a recession. The last thing the residents of Rutherford County needs, with all of that, is a tax increase. And so I hope that this works.
I think Commissioner Good's got a valid point about having a tax increase this year, and the reason I say that is these assessed values to some people are going to be an increase in their taxes that they pay. Now, to explain the certified rate, we are required by law, if there is an adjustment, have equal revenue neutral. So basically, we are not to make any money off the assessment. The county does not get more funds for that to set it to the certified rate. However, if your assessment is above the average, and I've been told the average was 43%, somewhere right in that neighborhood. I know that my district is 49.6 average. So my guys, myself included, are getting a 3% increase if we don't have a tax increase. I know something that is distasteful, and that's using one-time money to take care of ongoing debt. Depending on what this came out to be, what the increase would be, say, when we took Commissioner Gooch's recommendation, we do have some one-time money that we could fund these pay increases, that we could pay this. And the only reason that I would entertain it is because of these assessed values being so high across the board. Because here's what's going to happen. If we raise it a penny, okay, which is $1.4 million is the revenue that we would get on the penny. If we raise that, these assessed values that are 70% above what the average, I've heard people tell me some astronomical numbers. These people are going to say, well, the commission raised my taxes 70%, which we haven't. And it's completely out of our control. That is a state function on the reassessments and how often they happen. We have the option to, if we desire to raise taxes, to not go back to the certified rate. That would be our option if we ended up having to do a pay or a tax increase. The certified rate is, what did you say it was, Lisa, 1.6 or 2 points?
1.6158, that's my preliminary number. And Commissioner, this kind of gets me my concern. A couple concerns, but related to the certified rate. My concern would be, what if the certified rate is less than this? And we don't, and I've built the budget on it being this rate.
And we've seen it change.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going through and saying we don't want to do a tax increase in anything, whatever happens to the certified rate, it's okay. We're going to live with, because if you increase it, you've got to have a public hearing on it. That's my. You gotta do it.
Well, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, regardless of what, if we said, yes, we're going to have a tax increase, if it was only a penny, but somebody's average is a 49 or above, you know, if you did remodeling, guarantee you yours is going to be above. A lot of houses are above, period. I know Commissioner Cook's was the highest up in the Laverne area, 49.9. Like I said, mine's 49.6, and our area is the second highest. So those folks are going to see, on average, an increase, even if we go to the certified rate, which is revenue neutral. So if we even did 1 penny, all of that increase, they're going to say, guys, y'all did this. Well, we haven't. That's why I'm saying I would look at maybe using some one-time money and be straight up about it. If it was, say, a penny, if that's what it took to get the raises, but say straight up, next year, if our revenues are not increased enough, which we don't know, they may be. We've got the approximately $5 million coming from Nissan, which is recurring money. So it could be that, but just say, hey, we were 1 penny short. We'll pay it one-time funds with the knowledge that we've got to pick this up next year, period. And the only reason I would entertain that, I don't think it's good business to do one-time money on it, but otherwise, these assessed values, if they're not put back to the certified rate, they're going to say, guys, you raised my taxes this much. That's my thoughts on that, but I'd like to hear.
Okay. With what we're seeing here, at 16158 certified tax rate, with what we're looking at right now, okay? All right. What would the effect of 1 cent on the property tax, okay, how would that affect the certified tax rate? 1 penny would how much? What would the...
It's 1 penny generates $1,431,814. What our working estimate is.
Make sure you use your microphone, please.
Is your question, if the certified tax rate is higher, that's better. It's if it comes in lower.
Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When are we going to get this certified tax rate? I don't remember it ever being this late in the game.
Typically, we have it. I mean, it's funny. I got an email from the finance director in, was it Madison County?
Madison County.
Yeah. She texted me at 9 o'clock. I just happened to be there. What are you doing about your certified tax rate? Because they don't have their certified tax rate. I said, we don't either.
How can people make their budget without the certified tax rate?
It's a struggle. I mean, I mean, we're not the only ones in that boat until we get it back from the state. In Rutherford County, you've got Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne doing the best they can.
Well, it might be good for each of us to contact our legislators and ask them to call the comptroller and get us that, because we can't make a budget until we have that.
Make a guess of a budget. Unless you say, and the numbers I've used is kind of those initial numbers that they felt pretty good about, but yet they go back and forth with the person at the state. I don't even want to start in trying to that I understand exactly all these calculations that they do, because they have to go through, and if a house is on there for part of the year, say 25% last year, then 75% of it's new stuff this year, so you back out that. So there's a process, they have to go every month of what happens. And then there apparently is somebody at the state that they're discussing with on the state making sure that what we're doing is fair and accurate. So I don't know if it's one person at the state or two people at the state who does it. Do you, Mayor? I don't know. They're
You know
in
if
the
anybody has received their certified tax rate yet?
I don't know. I just know Madison County has not.
I mean, this is just
We ha-
unbelievable.
The one year that we thought we had the certified rate, and we built the budget on it. And, Mark, I don't know if you were here. You were here? It was like not even 24 hours after we've adopted the budget. Certified rate. And it was different than what we had. So we had to come back and adopted the certified rate.
Well, that's an issue to work out somewhere else, it sounds like, but I want to go back to the debt service fund. If we were to borrow, say, $75 million for additions to high schools, how would that affect the ending fund balance?
It's going to add appropriations. So 75 million, I do my quickie, is $75,000. It's $5,620,000. It's $5,625,000 estimate for the debt service for that year. So I would, in a full year, that's what I would estimate.
But this won't be a full year if they start working on it in like
All
October, November.
It all depends on when we borrow. So if it's, however that timing is, and we end up not borrowing until maybe January, February,
Can they
it's
use one
just
of
a
those?
piece of a year.
Can they use one of those interfund capital outlay notes to get it started and then borrow later in the year to?
I mean, that's what we would do anyway. Yeah.
I just don't want it to sound like if we reduce the debt service fund, that there's just no way they're going to be able to build the high school additions because
No, and going back, 75% is the golden, to me, the golden amount, but we could go to 65.
Well,
5%.
you're not even looking at what the schools are going to have coming to them. They've got 50-something million. How much is it, Mayor?
Oh, for the TISA. That's coming, the next
Could be
year.
used toward these same additions, so that's what I'm.
That money won't, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, that money won't come in this next budget cycle. It'll be the
The
next
next.
budget cycle.
And I think that's why the school felt comfortable using their fund balance and doing that strategy to be able to take care of capital, knowing that next year it would be there for them.
Well, so I'm back to my question. If we had a placeholder in there for borrowing $75 million, I want to know how much the fund balance, we've got on your sheet here, is 89.06 if we don't borrow anything, which we know we're going to be borrowing something.
I would estimate half of the debt service. I would add $2,812,000, thinking that we would push it off.
So
So in essence, I would add that.
but we're still above the 65%.
5. I mean, I'm thinking we can make it happen.
Lisa, when we discussed the debt service fund, you made note of $2.8 million in interest cost for the upcoming budget for a $75 million bond issue. So about 2.8 million.
So it's already in there?
No, it's not in there. We just
That's the amount.
discussed that question
Okay.
when we discussed the general debt service fund back in May 10th.
That's about what I come up with again.
Would that mean that the estimated appropriations would go up from 56 million to some 58 million,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So this 10% cushion that Trey has
Right at
would be
59 million.
easily absorbed.
Be right at 59 million. It's 2.8, so you got 56.2, so about 59 million.
Okay. So that 10% makes that a comfortable equation, am I? I'm sorry, finish your thought.
Well, I have other questions too about the other fund balances, like ambulance fund has a, pretty healthy fund balance there. I don't know if it would be wise to maybe move a little bit of money out of that fund. Of course, the highway fund, I'm not sure what we could take from them, if anything, from wheel tax or property tax, but they've got a $20 million ending fund balance that's going up $3 million. So I think we have a few options we could look at to avoid raising the property tax if we shifted some things around a little bit. And so I personally would rather do that than raise the tax rate.
And so maybe we start with moving the 5. Maybe we could just go ahead and change the debt service. Put that in there as the placeholder with the estimate and a good faith. We put it in there at some point in time to use it. Make sure all our balances are accounted for and we're accounting for everything, and move the 5.5 cents to the general fund as a beginning. It's still, I'm thinking of what we could do for publication. Still not saying we're raising taxes. Even if we come back later and do something different, maybe not take 5 cents, maybe take a penny, maybe 4.5, and take a penny from another fund. Still not raising the taxes, is what I'm saying. If we went in.
Do we need a motion to do that, or just do
Yes.
it?
You need to tell me that
Well,
that's what you
I will
wish.
make a motion to move 5.5 cents from debt service to the general fund.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second before we have any discussion?
5.5.
Second, Commissioner Johnson. Discussion.
I have a question. So, Lisa, part of the reason that we have that 5.5 cents in there is to try to pay that debt off quicker, correct?
When we set, you remember the spreadsheet that we would do? And there was a time where we would say, it looks like we may be doing $90 million every year for the next 4 years. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got to. It is odd to me how we cycle that. And we have that worst case scenario, and we adjust the debt service. And then the schools don't build as fast. And so then we don't need that level. And we'll snatch some pennies. We won't borrow it, and we'll snatch some pennies and move it. But when we say to pay it off early, we structure our debt over 20 years. Even when we refund to achieve lesser debt service being paid, we never extend that debt. It's still in that same period of time. So in essence, we don't pay it off early. We just fix it and pay less. But the structure is still the same. And then we kind of move those savings, kind of to smooth it so that our debt service doesn't do this. It's like, oh gosh, we got to raise taxes. So we try to keep it level. We try to achieve this level debt service so it doesn't surprise us and hurt us.
Yeah, I guess that's my only concern, because I know you're talking about, like, with the refunding, when we do that, we come out looking better. Right. So my only concern with, and I'm not opposed to moving the money out of debt service, I just want to really caution us that, because if we don't have that cushion in there, future commissions are going to experience that wild swing, because we are the fastest growing school system in 95 counties, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So I think we had a little bit of a reprieve because of the COVID experience. That is very soon going to be over. And so we're going to be paying, playing catch up really fast. And so that's just my concern for future commissions, to not have any kind of a cushion in there. They're going to see those wild swings, and it's not going to be predictable for the citizens of Rutherford County, though we've been trying to make it predictable and consistent in the past. That's my concern.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner?
I intend to vote yes for this, but I have to come back to, we're considering somewhere around $16 million in pay raises. It was at 14, the sheriff's another million plus with all that math. Somewhere $15, $16 million that will occur next year and a year after, plus steps, and the year after plus steps. And we're moving $7.8 million this year. We're using one-time money. I'm just concerned that could we consider adding a penny or two to the tax rate to soften the blow that I feel certain is coming, because we are going to give raises to the tune of $16 million, and we're only making up a portion of that. If we aren't successful, or if the revenues go one way or another, a year from now, we may be looking at a 16 cents. Would it be wise to add 2 or 3 cents this year, as we're being so generous with our raises? Not generous isn't the right word, but we're adding so much to our debt, to our budget. Should we consider some additional revenue this year to soften the blow that I think is coming?
Commissioner, go
Well,
ahead.
you said we would be using one-time money to fund these raises if this goes through?
No. Part of one-time money. Plus, you've got a very good idea here to soften the blow.
Not using. I don't think this is using any.
This isn't. But we're using.
When you look at
We're
what our fund
balancing the
balance
budget by
is.
using the
Not yet,
COVID funds.
not yet.
We're not there yet.
Well, we've got a,
We can balance the budget not using one-time fund, but by moving the 5.5 cents.
The 5.5 will resolve the.
Yes, and that.
But I'm only seeing 7 million. I may have missed half that.
But that's not using any one-time monies.
The 7.8 million.
The 7.8 million is the 5.5 cents.
Correct.
That we're moving.
You're shifting up to general purpose, and with the increase of the salaries to this extent, moving 7.8 million. Where's the other 8 million coming from in this increased?
Well, we don't need
payroll?
another 8 million. If we move the 7.8 million up to general fund, we get all the raises,
Yes.
and that would leave us over our 15% requirement in the general
Correct.
fund, any fund balance.
And leave 75% in debt
And leave
service. Great
75%
math.
in it.
I think I'll tell you what I'm hearing Commissioner Dodd say.
And I may be looking at the bottom line, and we're just at county general. I'm concerned we moved too fast here. The bottom line is $61.9 million
That's going to stay.
that we're going to use.
It's going to move.
But we will still, by moving the 5.5 cents, we will still have an ending fund balance total of $147,424,191.
That
To
you-
me, that's enough.
You meet your policy.
We made a
You
policy.
meet your policy. You still, that the revenue over under expenditure, the bottom line is going to be the same. The very bottom line will be the same, and I think that's what you're saying is what happens the next year.
Correct. With hitting our fund balance to the tune of 61.9 million, correct? we're going to hit it. Last year, we hit it for 30 million. And so we'll just play that game until that pressure is too great. Then we raise taxes, whatever necessary at that time. Or are we cutting it too?
No, I don't think we're cutting it too thin. And we don't know. We don't know that in a year or two we're going to have to raise any taxes. But it just seems to me, and I know I brought this up before and I don't want to harp on it, but in a time that we're in hyperinflation, a recession is on the horizon, $147,424,191 is enough to be in the ending fund balance. More than enough. Because the citizens of Rutherford County, I can't ask them to pay more. If we can do this and it works, then who in the world is going to ask the citizens to pay extra taxes during this time? We can do everything we want to do, looking at it right now.
And will we anticipate hitting our fund balance so hard next year to maintain the salaries? What do you anticipate? I'm concerned about a $62 million drawdown. Last year was a $30 million. And your comfort level is next year, we don't know what it's going to be next year. It could be so much less. And the revenue may be up and the fund balance may stay at $147 million. You're comfortable
for example, if I may say, we budgeted at the end of 2022, which would be June, we estimated that we would have $193 million. Let's just round it up to $194 million in any fund balance. We ended up with almost $209 million. It just seems to me that every year we end up with more money. And I know it's because we project conservatively, so thank you so much. And so, yes, I think probably we will end up with more ending fund balance of the 147. That makes sense.
It does.
Right.
It does.
And I just want to point this out too. So it looks like that Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but our total debt is $480 million. $485 million. I'm looking at the tab 15 on the next to the last page.
That plus the bottom, but you're in the ballpark.
Okay, so is everyone aware that 24 years ago, our debt outstanding was $500 million? We have built, I don't know how many schools, I don't know how many ambulance stations, a judicial center, and tons of other capital projects, and our debt has gone down. Am I wrong, Lisa? In today's dollars,
Well,
500 million, a lot less than 500 million 24 years ago.
Go to that second page, the next page.
You mean the last page?
That page after you were looking at the summary of outstanding debt where you were.
Okay.
It's the next page. And sometimes I have to think about, where are people looking at? And this might be the number that's more comparable to the one that you were talking about, is when you talk about what are your interest requirements too. You see what I'm saying? Our principal, and that's what was over on the first page, there were folks that I'm sure you remember, that would tell how much debt we had, and they would use the principal and interest. And I try to explain, when you ask somebody how much do you owe on your mortgage, you typically say, this is how much principal I owe. But if you
I
say.
don't say that, I say everything out.
Well, I'm saying,
Yeah.
it's what are we asking, what's our debt? Because that interest could change based on whether we refund or not. So, to go back to your number, that 500 number that you remember might have been a number that was principal and interest number. And the principal and interest for the existing debt, everything is 597 million.
But if I remember correctly, it was on the same line where this is, which would mean it wouldn't be taken in consideration, the interest. But even so, you think about everything we've built
Oh,
in 24 years, and our debt, even if you're right, our debt's only increased by, and I don't think that it has. I think that the number that I was using was not including that interest, so to speak. It was just a principal, and the principal now is $486 million roughly, or 85, I'm sorry. And it just seems like our debt is staying the same, and we're just building. In other words, we have aggressively paid off our debt.
And that is the
That will
other thing.
continue.
I mean, I want to toot our own horn. When you look at that sheet, that includes principal and interest. And I told you that we amortize our debt over 20 years. These buildings, how long are they going to last? Definitely more than 25, definitely more than 30, definitely more than 40. We're going to pay 70% of that debt off in 10 years. With our current structure, in 10 years, 70% of our debt is going to be paid off. Now, that would be safe if we don't ever borrow anything, but that's not reasonable either. But this schedule, we put enough funds in there to pay for the debt, and we still keep this.
I guess my point is that we are very responsible debtors, and we're aggressively paying off our debt. And we have built, I would like to know, maybe not right now, but how many schools have we built in the last 24 years?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, how many ambulance stations, how many capital projects? Look at the judicial building. Look at what we've done here at the courthouse. And on our debt, it's about still the same.
And when people talk
And that's my
about,
point. We are handling our debt service fund appropriately.
and people look at that big number and say, how awful is that? It's like, but look around. It's not operating. We're not borrowing to operate. We are borrowing to build buildings that is going to be here longer than that debt is.
Okay, we've had pretty good discussion on the motion. Are there any more comments from the committee on the motion and second that we have as far as moving the 5.5 cents out of debt service? Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just once again, this isn't cast in stone. This can be adjusted later if we find out more information, so.
The only thing that I would caution is that if you're not going to raise taxes, you're not going to raise taxes. You might move it. I'm saying that because we're getting ready to go to public hearing on what y'all are deciding. And that's no increase on taxes whenever that certified rate comes.
Right, I just want people to understand that this can be adjusted later in the process if we needed to, so.
But we're going to have a public hearing, right, Mr. Chairman, regardless?
Of course.
Okay.
We always have a
Always
public
do.
hearing.
It's just really, really required. If you've got to talk, if you're going to have a tax increase, you got to talk about you're going to have a tax increase. But we do have a public hearing anyway.
Can you ever remember having a tax increase on top of a new assessment year?
Yes,
That has happened.
yes.
Yeah.
Mayor Burgess, it was 9 cents. That's right.
Yeah. Any other questions on moving this 5.5 cents?
Just one comment. And this includes the payroll, the raises, includes the step one for the 30 new fire personnel and the 19 new ambulance, correct?
The half a year, you're talking about new
For
positions?
that portion, yeah, that, the discussion we had, those guys are,
All the new
those personnel are still in
positions,
here.
y'all have not taken action to reduce any personnel?
Lisa, I might just mention, I wasn't here on Tuesday night, so I don't know the recovery court and the maintenance issues.
I
don't-
gave it to them.
I don't know if that's been discussed and voted on to
It-
change the budget, but it does include those expenditures that we're calculating in here.
Yes, yes, and the way I guess I was approaching it, those were recommendations of the mayor to include, and we talked about it, and I gave it to them last night so that they'd have the document in their hands.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Go. One thing, while we're going to pause for a second, one thing I do want to mention, I think Commissioner Gooch is hitting the nail right on the head. We've always been aggressive about paying our debt. When we had the development tax, we put in place that half of that went to debt. 20 years from now, if we don't set any more debt, we're completely paid off. You know, we're not setting up our children's children for debt here. We pay it off aggressively. And that's one reason we've got that AAA rating. If it came to, we've always shown that we were willing to do a tax increase if needed. You know, we don't want to if we can help it at any time. But if it's necessary, that's something we've done in the past. But, and like I say, you don't get that kind of rating without having good policies in place and sticking to them. So, okay, we're back in place. Any other questions? If not, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, okay, the motion carries. Lisa, this time we're still reviewing the budget as necessary. Does anyone in the committee have anything they want to bring up as far as changes they'd like to make to the budget as we've approved it so far?
Kind of the summary, because I've not gone in, other than what we did in the general fund, the numbers, I don't know if we need to do it overall or if we're working off of the change in fund balance to say total estimated revenues at $713,495,347. It still should be that same number with just things moving. And appropriations at $775,444,902. And so you've got the step of how we got to those numbers, the school board and all the other funds. I've not made any other adjustment in any other budget. So if this is what, unless y'all tell me different, I would assume you would vote on those numbers for publication.
So does anyone on the committee have a recommendation for any changes? All right, I've got a suggestion I'd like to see, but I want to hear from Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to know how it would look if we used some of that rescue money to do our salary increases, like as premium pay. How would you calculate that? Would it be like a percentage?
Okay.
Does it have to be a flat
Okay.
amount for the people, or can it be based on a percentage of their salary? How do we use that if we decide to go that direction?
If you remember okay, I'm going to try to remember. They can't make more than $25,000 in total. We've not talked about the possibility of using additional American Rescue money for premium pay. But you could, because we not definitely didn't hit the 25,000. I can't remember the.
Seemed like it was 75,000 or below that we could use it.
There's a amount of money that if you make more than that, you can't use that money for premium pay. You can't use the American Rescue money for premium pay.
That's
If they
the
make
rules of
more
the
than the
grant.
median.
That's not us.
Right. Then, I can't remember if it's $17, $22, or $25. There's a dollar amount that it can't be more than. I just don't remember that piece of it. But there are some parameters that you could reuse that.
We said for everybody that's under that threshold, if we wanted to give them a 2% premium pay, that would reduce what we have to put in the budget from our general fund for
Right.
next year. But then the year after that, that would have to be absorbed as a cost.
That's correct.
But that would help us this year to
Correct.
avoid the tax increase if we decided to do. But who would do the work on that? Would it be easier just to give everybody a flat amount, or is it?
I mean, we did it the last time, our office did it.
But it was a flat amount for
It was
everybody.
it was a flat amount. It was a flat, whether you're full-time or if you're part-time, and if you were hired over this date, you got the full, or if it was after that date, you got a half.
But if we said we
some
wanted to give
parameters.
everyone under that amount like a 2% premium pay, we could do that?
I'd have to calculate that to make sure that they weren't making more than the hourly rate, or that their salary was not, that number adds to the salary that they can't be paid more than.
Looking down the road, what else are we planning to use that money for? Do we have any projects other than those public safety buildings that we were going to use the money for?
Okay.
Let me step in for a second. It's something I mentioned to you the other night, and we haven't discussed this. There's other things I wanted to ask about this revenue, but we have the solid waste problem potential hanging over our head. We don't know if we potentially would have to start paying tipping fees, hauling our trash to a different location. We do have these funds, what is it, at the end of the month, 32 million?
32 million, I got notification I sent to you all. NACO sent a letter out, or an email, saying that the second tranche, 32 million, will be coming in this month. It has to be from 12 months from the last time that we got our first tranche. And I would assume we've already applied for the second.
We did.
So everything's
We-
there.
We've done all that we can do for
We're
that.
just waiting for that money to be deposited, which I called NACO the other day in DC. We should deposit it. So out of that, we had to go in the 32 million. We had to borrow a little bit from the 32 million to go in and finish up Las Casas and
Walter Hill.
Walter Hill, because of the escalation of pricing with supply chain. Each one of those locations went up, so we had to borrow some from that. And then in April, you asked us to set aside at least 23 million of
That's the other piece to this that that until it gets, I mean, we have already budgeted everything that we have got to date. So that is the other card up our sleeve that
Is that the lost revenue?
the lost revenue. And so when that comes in, that's 23 million that we
could be
will,
used to offset salaries.
we could, it's a way to get it into the general fund. Not there yet. But once it goes into the general fund, it would offset this. Again, it's still using one-time, it's
It's one
still using one-time money, but it would help our,
It's a windfall.
yes, and then that 23, whatever, you know, as you said, of the 30-some million, 20, if we can put 23 million over, then you could, Commissioner P., transfer a part of it into solid waste to take care of that issue.
Right, and like I said, you asked if there were other, and that's something that's looming. That's the elephant in the room. We've talked about elephants in the room before. That's our elephant right now, whether everybody realizes that or not, but it's hanging there.
But I do appreciate the commissioners looking at this as if not knowing that that money's coming. It's like, how would we handle this if this money was not in play? And I think you've got a good solution.
Right. Well, are there any other adjustments or to the existing budget as we've reviewed it so far as the mayor's recommendations part of the fund? If not, I want to bring up a recommendation. When we looked at the nonprofits, one of the agencies is no longer in operation, which is HARC. We were funding them at $20,000.
Yes, sir, they're still in operation, but as you heard the other night from when United Way made their presentation, they don't have an executive director. They have one employee, and she actually resides in East Tennessee. They still have a board, but we had and previously given them $20,000 because of problems, and I didn't see any money going to the homeless of what the request was for. It was going basically to salaries of the executive director and the 2 staff people, which they only have 1 now. I didn't see it going to the homeless, so I recommended dropping down from 20 down to 12,000. And now, as I talked the other night when Megan Flippin was here from United Way, is to transfer that over, but they haven't worked out those details yet. Now, back to Chairman P's request.
Well,
He and I have talked about this.
my request was, or what I'd like to see, is we in the past have given funds to the Discovery Center. The Discovery Center is mainly funded by Murfreesboro City. Of course, it is here in the city, but their clientele, I think 78% of that is in the other parts of the county other than the municipality. So they are offering a service to the whole county.
They actually have more visitors than any other venue in the county.
I think what was
Mainly school kids that come.
I've read those numbers. It was
Other counties as well.
right. It was a huge number, but my suggestion would be to take that 20,000 that we had been allocating to HARC and move that to the Discovery Center. And there's several reasons for that, but
Is it actually 30, 20? I mean, I think we had 15 under the request 2022, 2023. We had 15. How many dollars do we have in the budget that we could shift?
We have 0 in there.
0 under the mayor's
Yeah,
recommendation.
the mayor's recommendation is 0 right now for that fund, so.
Is there a placeholder for any funds that we could shift to Discovery?
Well,
I support this, but I want to make sure I understand.
Would
that
be
was,
new money.
that pink list that you have was my recommendation, okay? So this committee can put back and the commission can put in whatever they want. So the reason for their request is when Ms. McDougall, Tara McDougall, who is the director, and Ms. Ash, one of the board members, Rita Ash, came to us this week and reached out to the chairman as well as I. They have actually been held up at gunpoint. They're very close to the trailhead, and there's a lot of homeless people that wander in. And in spite of, with what recently happened in Texas, they have grave concern, and they need to hire. They've had security from Crimson, the same company we're using on our buildings out of Smyrna. But that money has ended, and they're going to go back to the city and ask for some, and also ask for security funds from us, and they were requesting $40,000.
Well, that's what I was going to say. This is actually half their request, but it's something that was budgeted in last year, so it's not actually an increase from what we've had in the past in the nonprofits. Lisa, go ahead.
You know, as you're talking this and for whatever reason, and I'm sure y'all start getting phone calls now that they've realized they missed the deadline and didn't submit a request, is Oakland's.
Well, and I understand that. You know, we've got several rules that we have went by. One is first time people, when they request, we maxed out at $2,500. However, we've actually given these folks money in the past. I don't feel like this is a first time request. Two, I think this is a very worthwhile cause, something that helps our community.
I just didn't know if you wanted to consider Oakland, opening the door for them.
Oakland called and said they missed, for whatever reason, they didn't fill out the form and send it in. And so I told them they could come in and we would present it back to this committee and consider it late. I didn't have a request, so that's why I put in 0. Was my recommendation. That's strictly a recommendation. I didn't give it to them, it's y'all.
That's also something you can look at tonight. Like I said, we're looking at everything in the budget. This is, you know, something that I would recommend we do. But I'm not in the position to make a motion on that. That would be something that
Yeah,
a couple of you guys would have to do if you so desire.
Yeah, I would, in great support of Discovery Center, and for that matter, Oakland's.
What is the amount that Oakland would have got?
You have given, let's see, typically you've kept the
11,000 last
same.
year.
You've kept Oakland's and Sam Davis the same, and the mayor's recommendation for Sam Davis is $12,000. They received, both of them received $11,000 in the current year.
And how much is Discovery seeking, or how much are we considering?
They requested 40.
And I suggested 20.
I'll make a motion to increase the contribution to nonprofits to the Discovery Center in the amount of $20,000 and to Oakland Association in the amount of $12,000.
Commissioner, I would put that in on the second page, 58, 110. I mean, that's kind of in that tourism area. That's where we'll
My
put
motion
it.
would be to place that money in the recommendation of the finance director.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this issue?
I just have one comment, Mr. Chairman. I completely support the motion, but on the HARC, it looks like the amount that was budgeted last year was $12,500. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that there was not $20,000 in that line item from last year. It was $12,500 from last year.
I'm sorry, I was mistaken on that. So,
Yeah, the first several years it was 20,000. We matched whatever the city gave. When I first got here, we carried a check down there for 20,000, and we started seeing Mr. Kraus. He was the director, you know, and it really hurt Reba. Reba was a treasurer, I think. She helped start this thing.
Had a heart for it. Yeah.
And it really hurt her to see this thing continue to fall apart. So I tried to get their attention last year by knocking them down from 20,000 to what we did give them was the 12,500, and they requested 15. But it's continued to spiral down even further than what it was the previous year.
I think last year's contribution, the mayor recommended $12,500 for HARC, and then we split that $20,000 down to Feed America First for $7,500. Feed America's First ended up withdrawing their application into the new year because they couldn't produce all the paperwork required in a timely manner. So we never did pay the $7,500 to Feed America First last year, or this current year.
Part of
Okay.
our conversation on the HARC issue too was, was that at some point United Way was going to try to absorb those responsibilities where they step in and fill that gap. So is there any mechanism for us to try to support United Way if those agencies do vote and they do come together with that, or will they just have to wait till the next budget cycle to ask for help?
Y'all are in the driver's seat.
You can do, you know, they can come back and approach and say they got it worked out, and that could be in October, and you can still say, let's allocate, you know, take it from the fund balance, pass it, and it's done.
Well, we'd have to advertise it
We'll have to
in the
advertise it.
newspaper. It has to be advertised for nonprofits, yeah. That's the only other requirement.
Okay. Any other discussion on this issue?
I just wanted to clarify, 20,000 Discovery Center, 12,000 Oaklands. Is that correct? Okay. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gooch, okay.
Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy? Yes. Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Quick question, and I got that email from Reba about when are we going to look at that? Or
Thursday,
Thursday? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
our next
We've
meeting.
got a fleeting window, and I didn't want to mess up and us not get it tonight if we had to. So, are there any other changes after reviewing the budget? Commissioner Johnson?
I have a question. I don't know whether it's appropriate at this time or not, but be concerning the property assessor's office, additional 2 personnel that he put in his budget. He put in the last 2 years, I think, and it hadn't been approved. So what effect would it have on the budget if we went ahead and did this now and added those 2 personnel due to the fact that this has been an appraisal year and workload, et cetera, and the amount of properties that's going on the payroll and everything, not on the payroll, but on the property tax roll. Is this appropriate time to address that?
This is the time to address it, yes. And you can in future meetings too, as far as that goes. Till now, until we set our budget, you know, all this is subject to change. But we can certainly discuss that. You know, you have specific questions, or you're suggesting that we add the 2 that he requested. Is that what you're saying?
I would recommend, that we go ahead and approve these 2 positions to kind of take care of the workload that's going to be coming down the road even more. That's just my humble opinion anyway.
I understand. Is there any discussion? I may call on Ms.
These are 2
Stevens.
additional, these are 2 additional positions. We gave him 2 last year. These are 2 more.
Right, we gave him 2 last year. He's requested 2 more.
But
Mayor,
he didn't fill the 2 from last year.
well, that's what I was going to say. Sonia, I may call you up here in a second, but Paul, here's the only thing that I've got a problem with this personally, and everybody else may have a different idea, but we actually approved these people, and the job was never posted, in my understanding, and never filled. Sonia, am I correct? Yes. So if they were needed, we appropriated the money for them to do it. He never posted the job and he never filled them. In my opinion, he doesn't need them. That's why I haven't. But I understand. You know, we have got a large growing county, and I don't doubt that he's needing people. But I can't understand why, when we have budgeted and gave it to him, it wasn't utilized. And if you're not going to utilize something, you know, why am I going to continue to give it to you? But that's a question for Rob to answer. I mean, he may have a good reason, but, you know, he can come forward to this committee and address this again if he wants to.
Mr. Chairman, if I remember correctly, we asked him if he was satisfied with the mayor's recommendation, and his response was yes.
We did, and he said yes.
Yeah.
But Paul's not incorrect. He's not incorrect. Any other discussion along for this particular issue? Paul, you got anything else you want to add to it? So, all right. Anything else on the existing budget that we might want to look at or change at this time? If not, we need to address what we're going to publish. Excuse me, I'll get that out.
Adding the 32,000, the appropriations, I mean, it would be as displayed, plus 32,000. That's the will. $775,476,902 is the estimate for appropriations, all funds.
Would you state that one more time?
Okay, estimated revenues, all funds. I mean, we can put this in the minutes as far as the detail, but you've got the detail in front of you. In total, estimated revenues at $713,495,347. Appropriations, $775,476,902. Tax rate, 1.6158, with 5 cents being moved.
5 cents or 5.5?
5.5 from debt service to the general fund. And y'all had already approved the 7 cents moving from GPS to the school capital projects. So that y'all already done.
So that's what we would propose to publish. Do I have any discussion on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we send this to publication.
Yes. And can we say, maybe with this, is that this is a budgeted number that we're using for the certified tax rate. The intent of the commission is to adopt the certified rate in case it goes up from this
Yes.
number.
And it's possible that the state may change that, yes. I think that would be appropriate. Having said that, I'll entertain a motion to that effect that we publish that along with this statement.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson has a motion for the publication. Do I hear a second? And a second. Any further discussion?
And the reason why I kind of want to have that from y'all is if between now and in a week, if we get it and it's higher, that's what we'll publish. Okay?
Okay. Do you understand? Everybody understand that? Okay. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy? Yes. Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Is there any other business?
Commissioner Stevens requested last night that we kind of come up with a game plan for the finance director position. I figured we could take that up under other business and didn't need to put it on as agenda item.
And that's exactly what I was fixing to bring up. And I don't know what your suggestion would be, just to throw something out there. If we throw out a first choice and whoever our first choice is, they decide they don't want it, basically, are we going to immediately go to our second choice, or we're going to look at it again? So let's start the discussion from there. Commissioner Stevens, if you want to start off.
I think before we get to that point, we've got to decide if we're going to do interviews again and what's the process going to look like for those. And as I said at the meeting last night, the ones we interviewed or Tuesday and Wednesday are the ones that I'm most interested in. So if we do interview again, I would like to bring them back and have a short interview. And part of that was whether Mr. LeCondre would come here in person for that interview, which I think the consensus seemed to be that we wanted to see him face to face and be able to shake his hand versus just looking at him through Zoom. So I do think that there's some follow-up questions that I have for each of those two before we make a final decision, but I'm not sure what the best process is to interview them.
Anybody else?
Are you saying that you do want a second round of interviews with Carol and Richard?
It would probably be nice to have that, but if we don't, I could probably make a decision based off what I've heard. But I think that there are a few things after I've thought about it that I'd like to ask each of them.
That's our decision to make. You don't feel comfortable this time with what we've done so far, and you'd like further follow-up questions, it's up to this committee to decide that. Or if we're confident with what we've heard from the people we've interviewed, the two recent ones plus the other two candidates, speak now or forever hold your peace. Commissioner Stevens.
We don't have to have a second interview. I mean, my questions aren't things that are going to be earth-shattering. It's more about style and how they are going to project revenues and their, kind of their worldview and how they make decisions and just basic things like this. I could make a decision off what we've already done if that's the will of the committee. But if we are going to interview again, I only want to do the two, Ms. Rossignol and then also Mr. LeCondre.
Okay, that's his recommendation, just that if we do another interview, to do just the two recent ones. Anybody else have a comment on that?
I'm going to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. Is that we nominate, help me with their names, Richard LeCondre and Carol Rossi, and vote for one.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the end of that.
And we nominate both of those two and vote for one.
As of right now?
If everyone is ready to make a decision, then I'll make that motion. If someone needs more time, then by all means.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, now discussion. Commissioner Stevens.
I was just going to ask before we vote on this, are we going to have a plan B? So in case plan A falls apart, are we going to automatically go to the second one, or are we going to open it all back up and start over again? Personally, I think on this situation, I'm very comfortable going to plan B, whichever one does not get selected if the plan A turns us down. But I think we need to know what we're going to do before this all goes down.
And I don't disagree with that. And we've got a motion, and actually we need to vote on a motion before we could actually do this, but I think we can do this with discussion here. If someone disagrees with us going to our second choice, if the first choice turns that down, let me know right now. If not, I assume that's the way we'll go. I don't hear anything. So we have a nomination for the two, and we're to vote for one. Is everybody confident that they want to go ahead and vote tonight? If I've actually had the chance to sleep on it. I feel a little better about my choices, so, Commissioner.
Are we giving them any kind of trial period to try, and if they don't like it, let us know, or are they locked in? Is there an escape route for them or us?
11 votes.
Commissioner, I'm going to ask Sonia if it's okay with the committee for her to help us answer that question. We need to suspend the rules for this.
I think there's an escape hatch under Lisa's desk, if I remember correctly.
That's an eject button, right?
So the county has a one-year probationary period in place now, and that's an opportunity for the employee to make sure that it's a good fit for them and for us to make a good fit as well. We're an at-will employer, so as long as we're releasing somebody for a non-discriminatory reason, we are at will. And so that is another thing. Also, you would have, if they were not meeting the expectations of this body, that would be another reason. So as far as that goes, we always put in our offer letters that there's a one-year probationary period and also that we're an at-will employer. So with that, if there were an issue, then yes, you would have the ability to, like I said, if it was for any non-discriminatory reason.
One other quick question. We put out a range, and I assume we can do this at another night. I don't feel like staying here all night. As far as what we would offer that person, that's some discussion for a future meeting, or is that something we've set?
Well, you did a range between 140 and 160. What I anticipated doing is taking whatever you did to our current table and seeing where that person would fit in at probably a 10, at the step 10. So it would still be within the range for which they applied. I didn't bring that tonight because I didn't.
But you'll come back to us
And tell you how much
with
it
that, what that recommendation.
And I
And we'll
did.
decide what it will be.
I'm sorry, say that again. I was talking, I interrupted you. What did you say?
No, I'm just saying that you will come back to us after you've looked at and with a recommendation on what that salary would actually be. But the committee itself will make that decision,
You could,
and then that's what we'll tell you to make the offer on. Okay, I just want to be clear on that.
and to, well, y'all didn't talk about that, so never mind.
Any other questions for Sonia, Commissioner Allen?
So if we agree tonight on who to make an offer to, you'll make the offer contingent upon a satisfactory salary negotiation? Is that how that works?
Typically, what we do is we do what typically happens is, and I'm going to say a department because usually it's not the commission that's doing this, so we would just say if the director would reach out to their employees, so at this point it may be the Chairman Pete, or I can do it on behalf of the commission if you give me the permission and authority to do so. Reach out to whomever you decide upon and give them a tentative offer over the phone verbally, and then ask what date they would be able to start with the county. And then after they give me that information, the verbal confirmation and a start date, then we draft a offer letter, and I email them the offer letter, and they review it and sign it and return it to me. And in that, it has the benefits, the pay, expected date for them to start work, and, things of that nature.
Yeah, one thing else I'll mention too is once they accept and they give us a start date, at that time, they will be the finance director. By the state law, we're only got one at a time, so we immediately have to change that person to that status, even though our current director would still be in place. Is that the way I understand it correctly?
So changing a finance director is a material disclosure to our SEC filings. We
Right.
call that EMMA. So it just has to be, we have to notice them that this has happened. And that's why it was important to me to say who is when, and if, when you make that decision, then that's when we'll
Put
make
them on notice, and then at that point,
all it is alert. It's alert to them.
and it doesn't impact, I believe in the budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in the budget, it was proposed to add in some cushion in there so Lisa could, stay to help get the new person acclimated until they felt comfortable. And at that point, that's for them to decide, I'm ready. And then at that point, she would go into the 120-day agreement, or however many, 900 hours, whichever one it was, to come back for special projects or special
As
needs.
needed.
As needed, over the next 120 days. But when the new person come in, they would be the finance director, and at that point, then Lisa is
Steps down.
mentor. mentor trainer, whatever you want to call it, but it does not impact Lisa's pay at that point. She stays at the amount that we budgeted, and then once she goes from there. How it typically works for other departments.
Any other questions, Commissioner Allen?
What was the offer that we extended to the last applicant? Was it 150?
No, it was 130. Wasn't it 130? How much was it, Mayor Kidron? Are you talking about Mr. Smith?
I was thinking he countered at 150.
No,
I think it was like 118 to 120 something.
well, we initially offered the 118, 120, and then we countered with
Countered.
130. I believe it was
Went back
28,
to up to
130.
135.
Yeah.
And
And he declined. So that was the max offer that we offered, was 135. And so that's why we then posted it 140 to 160.
For some reason, I had the 150 in my head. I just want to make
He
sure.
asked for 150.
I just want to make sure that we're not, I want to make sure that we were extending an equitable offer since he was a white male and we're dealing with a female and a black man. I just want to make sure that we are offering an equitable compensation to whoever this next candidate is. So that was the reason that I was curious about making sure we at least exceeded that number.
Right. And their experiences, like everything else, is different, and in some respects, he more experienced in some areas than others. You know, he has the auditing experience with some director, and they both have a mixture as well. So,
Any other discussion?
I just might mention that there's a lot of banking stuff that has to happen also on changing
yeah.
signatures and things like that. So just remember, just because she might not be the finance director, she's going to still be signing checks until we get that all through commission and through the banks and
Right.
changing those signatures.
Right. With the school board
Yes, school board changed
that's
also.
going to change.
Yep.
The chairman changes.
Right. Any other comments or questions? If not, Mark, I'm going to ask you just go down the row, call the row, and vote. There two have been nominated, Richard and Carolyn. Vote for one.
And you will either answer Adams, Rossignol, or LaCondre as your vote. Commissioner Piercy,
Rosenau.
Commissioner Stevens,
Adams, Rossignol.
Commissioner Allen,
Adams Rossignol.
Commissioner Dodd,
Adams Rossignol.
Commissioner Gooch,
Adam Nosey Ross.
Commissioner Johnson,
Carolyn Adams,
Commissioner P.
Adams Rosenthal.
That was easy.
Yep, I don't have to stretch my mind to count.
Sure, we've killed her name.
I don't even have to take my shoes off to add those up.
Guys, I'm glad we've got that behind us. Hopefully, we can, we'll have a positive reaction from her as well. Commissioner Allen?
Since, based on what Sonia just said in terms of that typically if it had been a department hire, that the department head would reach out. I don't know if we need a motion on this, but I would really like for you to be the person to reach out and extend that offer, knowing that you've got the authority from this committee to negotiate what you need to negotiate in the window that we've allotted.
I don't have a problem doing that. Myself, the mayor, since they report to this committee, I would suggest it comes from this committee. But I'll leave that up to you guys. If you'd rather have Sonia contact her, if not, I'll contact him and work in concert with Sonia.
I'll make a motion that you be the person to extend that offer, please.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll get that done. Sonia, I'll call you tomorrow and we'll see what we can do about contacting this lady. Okay, next. Any other business tonight? We've got a lot done, guys. I'm proud of you. We're adjourned.